Greetings and salutations, DMs, GMs, referees, judges, game operations directors, and all other varieties of storytellers. This is your DM, Scott, and it's time for another DM Quick Tip. Welcome back to the dojo, everybody. This week, we're going to talk about random encounters. So why do you need them? Well, in my opinion, I think they add an element of mystery and randomness to the game, right? It's right in there in the name. And you need that element of randomness, too, so that it kind of deviates from that linear storytelling you might fall into. But it's not always easy to come up with random encounters. Use these random encounters to give a feel of danger when traveling through the wilderness or through dungeons. This is especially useful if your players like taking a lot of long rests, right? Did you ever run across that party that they do one thing? We had one combat. I expended one spell. We're going to go rest for 8 hours. That'll get them right out of the habit when you start jiggling those dice in your hands. Once the long rest starts, they know they can expect something. And after a few random encounters, after everybody's taken their armor off and had a bite to eat and fallen asleep, they'll stop those frequent long rests. They can be great fillers as well. Random encounters can just kind of think of them as like the cream filling in a Twinkie. You know, they occupy a little bit of space. They'll slow down your adventure, your game session, especially if your party's moving along at a little quicker than expected. Here's some tips for populating your random encounter table. You're going to want to add some combat encounters, because who doesn't like a combat encounter, right? Everybody loves combat encounters. So when me and Bill get together and we do our random encounter tables, we use tables of 30. So we have 30 encounters on this random table. What I'll do is I'll make about 10 of my encounters combat encounters. 5 or so of these encounters will be weather-related. Nothing fancy, just weather stuff, with one being severe enough to potentially be mortal. You know, trees falling, branches flying around, that sort of thing. At least one will be related to a nemesis that is part of the plot. That way it keeps them in the plot. Sometimes they'll deviate if you don't pull them back in. 5 or so will be RP opportunities, traveling merchants, pilgrims, etc. These will always be encounters that will further the story or the plot. So these RP encounters, they're a nice piece of downtime, and this is where you can toss some adventure hooks in. Maybe some that they ignored in the past 7 or 8 towns that they've traveled through. I will usually add between 3 or 5 encounters related to a character's backstory and their story arc. And this is also a nice touch that your players are really going to appreciate. Now, you don't have to necessarily use all of these at every game session, but just keep that random encounter table with you. It's going to be handy. It's something you should have on your clipboard if you're like Bill, or clip to your DM screen if you're like me. Now, the remaining 4 or 6 encounters will be related to food, because who doesn't like to eat? So an animal to hunt, fish to catch, wild edibles, etc., a useful NPC that will travel with them, or special locations maybe, such as a henge or obelisks, ancient structures, etc. And that, folks, is this week's DM Quick Tip on random encounters. We'll see you next week in the dojo.